And then we'll go through the questions that we have. Okay, so welcome all. Right now we are 6 people in our 51st BC Open discussion. Today we'll be talking about, there are some questions around Docker container, there was a question around rapid start more or less, and then there was a question around data migration path to the central on premises or SaaS from Dynamics Nav. So we'll just go through the overview of those questions during this session today, and then we'll open it for questions if there are any. Let's go through the normal where you register. If you are here and you're not a default attendee and you'd like to be, then drop your name and email in the chat, and you don't have to register going forward. Otherwise, this page gets updated every week after this meeting normally, so you can always go and sign in for the next week. So before we start, I again wanted to remind everybody, DynamicsCon, the voting already started. If you haven't utilized your 12 votes, go ahead and utilize your votes for the sessions which are there, and vote for the topics that you are interested in. There are great sessions about Business Central this year also, and the best thing is that this year it's not 8 hours, which was kind of a problem for me while I was doing things. It is 4 days to 4 days, 2 hours every 4 hours every day. So there are sessions from Waldo. You have Chris, Toggles, all the great names that you have heard. Christian is one of the MVP from North America, and she is doing something on credit card transaction. So if you are interested, go ahead. Sean is doing some sessions around hacks, BC life hacks, and these are user groups, users, I guess. I'm not sure about Kim, but I know Minakshi, she's doing something around costing methods. Then there is you would have heard Walt last time around the deploy release with the feature tag, which is kind of interesting thought how things can be done in Business Central from the coding perspective. Then there are some new presenters from India. We see Gulshan, Vishal, and Akash, and then Tanya is a regular contributor of DynamicsCon, so you should surely attend those sessions. Data replication with cloud migration and data was that if you have integrations with Dynamics 365 or working anything with the Power Platform, I guess, that'll also need an integration with Dataverse. So go ahead and vote for these sessions. Shannon, if I'm not spelling her name incorrectly, she's also an MVP. She contributes majorly in Business Central domain right now. Go ahead if you read the details, and if you're interested, go ahead and vote for those. Then Dimitri is there, who's talking about can AI write AL, which sounds super interesting. Then again, some new people, I guess, from India. Then David is presenting or submitted 2 sessions. One is BC on-prem, maintaining BC on-prem server, as well as there is one which I'm super interested in, mentoring the path from Nav to Business Central. Shannon also have one more, and yeah, so you can go ahead, and then there is one from Tanya also. I think I've seen it because I used my votes. Where is she? Yeah, Tanya is doing something on report extension in BC. She's most of the time available in these meetings. So go ahead, everybody gets 12 votes, and if I'm not wrong, the last date is 28th. So on 28th, the votings will be closed. Go ahead and vote for your favorite topics so that these sessions can be available on the week of September 20 to 23rd. Steve, I don't see your session here. You're not presenting this here?
No, not this round. I kind of got burned out on on virtual conferences in the last year, so I'm taking
Okay,
a break.
sounds good. Yeah, so go ahead, vote for your favorite topics, and then we all will be there together between September 20 and 23, talking about those. Okay, so now coming back to our questions that we had. So the first question that we have was from Fazan, getting the requested resources in use while trying to run new BC container in PowerShell. The latest image downloaded successfully, but is unable to create container. Steve, any idea around this one? The requested resources in use?
I would the latest image downloads. Okay, so I would check the GitHub issues for BC Container Helper. I think there are a couple. Generally, these errors, there are a few of them, and they're very generic. And so I look at other people who've had this error, and but there are like 35 different reasons why these occur. So it's really hard to pin it down
Yeah,
to a specific reason.
and that's a good idea because I just searched for it on GitHub on Nav, or I guess I'm pretty sure it'll be available on BC Container Helper. I keep getting the error. AJ is saying the requested receive resource in use.
And also, as whenever you get a GitHub or excuse me, a Docker error like this, the full log is very important.
Yeah,
And oftentimes you have to submit it here, and then Freddie will say, "Oh, it's a disk issue. It's a something else."
right.
Did the person submit their full log?
No, this person did not.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, unless there's something in the log that explains or gives them some clue, I would submit it as a GitHub issue here on Nav Container Helper and GitHub. And you just look at a few other samples of the submissions, follow that format, and Freddie's usually pretty good about figuring out what the problem is.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks, Steve. And generally, my theory is, and I can be completely wrong for some people, but my theory is that I'm not supposed to be, and neither of most of us are supposed to be Docker experts. So if Docker is giving you the pain, it hardly takes half hour to 45 minutes to completely flush it down and reset it, reinstall it. I don't spend more than half an hour, majorly, until unless it's a pipeline thing where it's failing my builds in my DevOps. But on my local, I actually don't spend much time. I've kind of burned out of spending time on Docker issues. Steve, you were saying something, I guess?
Agreed. Fortunately, my issues have been related to BC Container Helper and the BC images, like my window version wasn't right.
Right.
I did something wrong. Fortunately, I have not had base Docker issues, but there have been things like this where there's been a minor, my configuration exposed a minor bug in BC Container Helper. So it does happen depending on which options you're using. So I agree that don't waste a lot of time unless the error is obvious. Submit an issue on GitHub and get help. And if Freddie says, "Hey, this is an obvious issue, you need to do this," then you learn your lesson and know what to research next time.
Right. And on the similar line, Docker is being as an right because Business Central is recently available in India. So there are I still see so many questions around Dockers and all.
Yep.
And as we all, as in Steve, have blogged about it, wrote about it, I video recorded about it on YouTube. I have also done those things. But remember, these things are changing so fast, at least in Business Central Docker space, that whatever you're watching may not be relevant. Like I haven't created a video around how you create your BC containers with the wizard, which is the safest option at this point for creating Docker container for Business Central. So if you are new to this, let's let's spend some time on this because this is becoming a new question, at least in India at this point. So the first thing that you need to do is install the module called BC Container Helper. That's just a PowerShell commandlet which adds some new PowerShell sample scripts or example scripts for you to make your life easier with Docker containers only for Business Center. So Docker is a big. Go ahead.
Is that is that a problem or recommendation if I want to keep both NAV Container Helper and BC Container Helper on the same machine?
Is there a specific reason for it?
Well, not really.
Yeah.
Nav Container Helper is the old version. It's totally deprecated. I'm not aware of any reason you should have it, and you should always run the latest version of BC.
BC Container.
Yeah.
So remove Nav Container Helper. That's the first thing, because there were so many issues where people had both. So always try to keep one. Don't keep multiple.
Also update. You also need to update the. You also need to update the BC container.
So yeah, BC container. Steve have a PowerShell script on his blog which automatically updates it. I'm using a task scheduler option which updates mine every morning. Okay, so you can use. There are multiple ways to keep your BC container helper updated. But for the people who might have used Nav Container Helper in past and haven't used it, first check that do you have Nav Container Helper or not. I'll not have it, but if you have it, then uninstall that module using uninstall module command. Then check that do you have BC Container Helper. If not, then install the BC Container Helper. This one seems the latest one that is available because mine get updated most of the days. So the first thing that you need is BC Container Helper. This is not mandatory to run BC Container, but it will make your life easier while you're working on Business Central containers, because once you install this module, you will see that there are so many commands added in your PowerShell related to BC container, like backup, copying files, exporting database backup, creating new users, get users, importing license. So you don't have to go or do things in a hard way, because the BC Container Helper, with this, Freddy gives you ways to do things simply without going into complex process. But this is not mandatory, but it's nice to have your BC Container Helper available if you're working on Business Central Dockers. Once you have BC Container Helper available, then there is a good command which is new BC container wizard, which gives you a set of options that makes your life easier. Instead of searching for scripts available online and then using a old script which might have been written by one of the blogger, anyone, it can be me, Steve, or anybody else, because initially it was only script and in the Nav Container Helper domain. But with BC Container Helper, there is this new wizard option which you can run from the PowerShell. I'm still not sure it does run it from here or not, but I always use this. So once you say new BC Container wizard, it'll give you a set of options or a wizard to follow the process to generate a script for your container. And it's super simple.
So do you think you can zoom in because we can't see clearly?
Okay, because the problem with this one is if you zoom this in, it kind of doesn't display properly, but let me try. Okay, is it visible now?
Yeah, it's perfect.
Okay, so the first option that you see while you're running your wizard is to accept the license like you do in every software installation. Then, because I've zoomed in, the second option is where you want your container on Azure or on your local Docker, on your local machine. You choose the right option. Then what type of authentication you want to use? There are different options. I would not recommend Windows authentication because I've seen problems around it, but you can use any of these. If you want to use your own username password, use A. If you want a static password, use this. If you want a random password, it'll show you the password at the end, but you can use this. So let's choose B. The container name that you need, and Freddy have also added some notes here which makes your life more easier. Like, these container names are case sensitive, so you should be very sure what you're using. So let's say I'm saying BC demo container, then which version you need, and all these options are based on what you want. Like, latest Business Central Sandbox will give you a image of Business Central SaaS. Business Central on-prem will give you the latest version that is available on-prem, which at this point is 18.3. The C and D options are for people who are, or companies who are registered for insider. What is that? There is a program from Microsoft, and based on that, you get major releases, preview releases from Microsoft. But these options, C and D, will require a password to use these options. Other than that, if you don't want latest, you want a specific build, then you can use of Sandbox, then you can use E. For on-prem, you can use F, and you need to provide the version number in these cases. And then last three options are for NAV versions if you have to use them. So let's say we want a specific Business Central on-prem build. Now, as soon as I selected F, it needs a version number, which you should know, but you are not supposed to remember everything. You should know at least the major build that you need. So let's say I need an image of 17.3, and I don't know much about it, so I can just say 17 cumulative update 3 0.0. The system will pick 0.0 was an option, I guess, so that's why it got selected. Now it says which country you want to use. NA contains US, CA, and Mexico, and if you have other countries, you can use that. So let's say India. Do you want test toolkit? Are you planning to write automated tests with your containers? If you want, then you need to have test toolkit. If you don't want to write automated tests, which is a bad option at this point, you can use the option D, which is no test toolkit. I don't think anybody is doing AL-based app development, which is modifying the Microsoft base app. But if somebody is doing that, then they can choose yes here, and it'll download the source code of the base app and other apps in your local machine. AL language extension, you only check this off or enable this when you are using an insider build, because the AL language extension is the extension that you use in your VS Code. So when I am, let me open my window. Okay, what is that? Okay, here it is. Okay, so just to do development for Business Central, we all know that we have to install an extension called AL language. Which is this one. Now, the one which is publicly available will support the versions which are available for public use, like Business Central 18.3 and all. In case of insider build, where you are getting a version which is not available for the public use, the default AL language extension for your VS Code will not work. And in that case, you need a VSIX file to install this extension, which you can then do from here, install from VSIX. And this then gets that, downloads that file with your container. So only for insider builds, AL language extension. You need a license, not for demo use or other users, but there are only some situations where you need license, and we'll see them. So if you have a license, you can assign it here. Otherwise, you can leave it blank. Then there are different options about database. You want to use a database inside Docker. You want to restore a backup inside Docker, or you want to connect to an existing database on your local database server. So you can choose either of those. Multi-tenancy, if you are building an app which have something to do with multi-tenancy, where you are building it around multi-tenant capabilities, then you can choose yes. Otherwise, the default is also no. DNS, which DNS will be used. So you can use the default one, Google one on the container, or the public host DNS if you have. Do you want to use an SSL? The only difference is in your browser, you will see HTTP or HTTPS, and all your external integrations also work on based on what kind of SSL you have chosen. Have you chosen SSL here or not? So I'm using it for demo purpose. So I'll use A, no SSL. Isolation, I only do, and I don't know much about it. As I said, I don't want to be a Docker expert. I always allow container to decide it, which is A. Memory limit, the whole summary of it is it at least needs a minimum of 4 GB, and the way it is defined is as 4G. So if you want more, you can surely do 6. 6 is suggested for development. I guess app development is 4 to 8. 16 if you have to do a base app development where you are trying to modify Microsoft app, and 4 is for demo and test. Minimum is 4 GB of RAM that will be utilized by this container. The next option is, do you want to save the image? The only benefit of saving an image, if you have to create multiple containers based on an image. So right now, normally what I do is I'll have one image on my local store, 1 or 2, because I keep on breaking my containers that I have, and I have to rebuild my containers. So right now, if you see, I have a BC 183 US sandbox image, which is the latest Business Central image for SaaS, and then I also have a BC 183 India on-prem image. And the only reason of having these is because I might have 2 containers right now, but I kind of messed this up sometime on my containers, and I had to delete a container. So because I have a saved image, next time when I'm trying to build a new container, it'll save some time because I don't have to download that image again. So only if you have to create multiple containers based on one image, then try to save the image, which is just providing a name. Otherwise, leave it blank. And this generates your PowerShell script that you need to run to build your container. So don't go ahead and find it from, let's say, my GitHub or anybody else's blog, because it's easier now to generate the script that you want to run. So let's say I'll save it as on my D drive demo. What I'll do, I'll open that in my PowerShell ISE, which is this command. And I can just hit run, and it will download, or sorry, it will create my Docker container. So don't find an article where there is a script written, because that was with nav container helper, where creating Docker containers was a little bit complex, and people used to share those scripts, and there were problems and things like that. But with BC container helper, using this wizard option, you can generate your own script, and I don't even save this. I'll run this and get away with it, remove this. Next time I need it, I'll rerun my image. Oh, sorry, wizard. And Sam, you're saying something?
It doesn't just add all parameters when you go through the wizard. For instance, it didn't add the isolation process. The problem you mentioned earlier, it was about the container not getting created once the the command is executed. It may be about the memory, not the memory limits, the isolation process. You could say it to Hyper-V or just process. But if you go for the container, I mean the wizard, it doesn't add the parameter. You see?
I think because we chose the default option, that's why I didn't added it.
Right. Yeah, and you may get feedback from Freddie that based on his diagnosis, you should try Hyper-V isolation. But my understanding is you shouldn't have to do that. The default should work most of the time.
Quite frankly, I run into what I would say a similar problem. I tried isolation, Hyper-V, and process. It doesn't do anything, just so you know. I've tried both. It doesn't do anything. I ended up troubleshooting the image, the container, working on the source code of the BC container, but the isolation process doesn't do anything, actually.
Yeah, that's typically, in my experience, that relates to a mismatch of the Windows version. And so when it cannot run in a native environment on your machine, or there's a version mismatch, Hyper-V isolation helps buffer the Docker container from your base OS in case there are some slight version mismatches. So it's only for one specific scenario. Steve,
you did say in a previous video of yours that Windows needs to be version 19.08, yep. Over. Still, I'm running the latest version of Windows, but I get to run into some problems sometimes with specific versions of Business Central.
Yeah. Well, the problem I run into is if my Windows update occurs, it pushes my version of Windows to a newer version that is not yet fully supported in the BC images. And so that's why I personally do not run Docker on Windows 10. I run it on Server 2019. I do have it on my laptop if I travel, but I know that may break at any time because of the annoying Windows 10 updates.
It does, and sometimes it just throws the blue screen once you boot the computer. You see?
Yeah. So I mean, I know people who a lot of people do run on Windows 10, but they try to avoid Windows updates and they try to avoid Docker updates, and I don't consider that a very viable practice. So yeah, Server 2019 LTSC, it's very stable. I have had the only issues I've had is when I've made mistakes.
So it's not 2019.
Pardon?
2019, is it?
Windows Server 2019. So yeah, it's a very similar code base, but it's very, very stable, and you do not run Docker Desktop. You can run the quote Docker Enterprise, which just gets installed via PowerShell command.
So it doesn't have to be a specific edition.
Edition of Docker?
No, Windows Server.
Windows Server 2019. There are several releases of it. I think I'm on 1909 or something like that, but I think the 2004 or 20H1 will work. I would not grab the absolute latest version. I would go back at least one version of Server 2019.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so I guess the idea is to give it a try first, because I still feel that most of the developer will still have to run it on Windows 10/11 that's coming up.
Yeah.
But the only thing that I have learned all these years, that if it is giving problem, flush it out, completely remove it and reset it up. It hardly takes half an hour or so to reset up your whole Docker thing, and it doesn't break every day. So don't spend much time on your Docker issues. Surely create your issues on GitHub, on BC Container Helper, but don't spend more time into it, and don't let it be the blocker for your development.
Yeah, and related to that, and I'm sure we've discussed it in a prior call, do not get attached to a specific Docker container. Assume the Docker container you create today is gone tomorrow. It's disposable, and everything you do should be around just using it temporarily and then having it blown away and then recreating it. It is a hassle, but
it doesn't have to be. You could always commit the changes you make on a container to a specific image. I've just created an extension with a specific container. I'll be committing the container into an image. It would be creating a new image. The image I could back up from Docker into a different hard disk, and then I'll be creating the same container, the same changes, because I did commit the container.
But why you are going that route? As in, I don't want to drag on that, but my idea is that, as in, the way I look at Dockers is a system that can give me symbols for my code development, as well as to do a initial testing of, or the first level testing that's done by developer for the code that I have written. Once that is done, then my code goes to my source control.
Yeah.
And then that Docker is not relevant for me, as in it's not mandatory for me.
So
I agree, but you need to think. Pardon, Steve. You need to, to take this the bigger scale, as you'd be, working on a container. You'd be committing the container to an image, then uploading an image to Docker Hub. A customer could just download the image, create the container, and everything is set up. The extension, the data, everything is set up just because they've downloaded the image that you've created. You see.
But customers, and sorry, Steve, you can start.
Go right ahead.
Customers should not be using Dockers.
Well, they don't need to have, BC installed on their own server. They could be using Docker. If
They
it's
should
SaaS,
not.
Are you saying for production or just for dev testing?
both, really. If they use SaaS, they could definitely be using Docker.
Well, yeah. So I came from the on-prem world where I was attached to VMs, right? I would have VMs. I have VMs that I've had for 10 years. Docker is not that. Like I now have learned, hey, I'm going to do my testing on this Docker container. If I need data, I need to create that data. If I need code, I need to install it, extensions, install it. And then I know that every morning my Docker containers get deleted and recreated fresh with whatever the latest build is from BC Container Helper.
And that's the same approach, Sam. I would suggest. Docker is not for customers. It's just to help developers, because they cannot maintain different versions of, or even different CUs of the same version on the same machine, right? Sorry, go ahead.
Recently I'm working with a company that they run SaaS, but not on Azure. They didn't go to Azure and run their VMs and everything. They have Docker images for each country, like Vietnam, India, USA, UK. They have each country localized database, if you will, on a Docker container. It's for the company which is present on the international stage. They don't need to go to Azure. They've created their own SaaS with Docker.
Oh, so they're running on-prem BC.
That's
no,
right.
they're running sandbox images on Docker.
But they do have access through the internet and using Docker.
But these are production instances?
Of course.
Wow. I mean, Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's completely unsupported.
Yes, that's not so. That's I never heard it, Sam, and I don't even think Microsoft supports that, because it's even the whole Docker thing is not a Microsoft supported thing. It's just a Freddy's initiative to do all this, to make developers' life easier. Okay, so rethink about it, because I come back from the same, as in I always go to the source why anything was released. And the reason of Docker releasing is you cannot, as a developer on your local machine, cannot have a 17.3, 17.5, 18.5, 18.3, 40, now BC 14 on the same machine, because it's impossible to do. And that is the problem that Docker is tackling for developers.
And also, if you're doing DevOps pipelines, Docker, spooling up Docker images as part of a DevOps pipeline for your build and automated testing. That's where it makes sense. It is not a production solution as far as I'm concerned. It's as you're seeing, it's not stable enough. It's not reliable enough. I don't think.
Yeah.
On Windows.
Same here. The whole idea of Docker was not to be used on production in general, not just BC, but Docker in general also gives issues, not just the business entity.
I know. No, sometimes you just fire up the computer, you've got the container completely wiped out, or it fails to just start up. You'll have to create the container, then you remember that you have like a couple of extensions on that container, and that's a problem, you see?
Yeah,
right.
Definitely not a good practice in my opinion.
Yeah. So think about it, Sam.
Well, you could always use with GitHub as you go. Like everything you get to create on the second is replicated to a repository.
But the thing is, you don't need to have that invested in a Docker image. So my PowerShell script recreates my image. It installs an extension that Eric Hugard provides. And so if I need extensions installed, that's all part of my build script. If I need data installed, I can do that as well. None of that needs to be invested in a sacred Docker image. And then as you're learning, Windows updates, your Docker image no longer works. You've lost all of that investment. Yeah.
Okay, that was interesting. As in, I never thought somebody will be using like that. But,
why not?
Okay.
It's a cheap workaround.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and see the next question, which was around how can we import, update bulk master data in Business Central 14. So either you are on Business Central 14 or BC SaaS or Business Central 18 on-prem, and I don't know, the person who asked it was on LinkedIn, so I didn't want to name him at the point until somebody filled up that form and asked a question. But starting, let me remember this, I guess NAV 2013, that's where the rapid start was introduced in NAV. There is a way that you can download data out of your master tables, as you are only talking about that. And you can also update that data in Excel and send it back. The way you do it is you search for configuration package, either on your Dynamics NAV or Business Central. Create a new package. You'll have to give it a name, test. And make sure you exclude the configuration table, otherwise it adds some config tables into this list, which are not required. Once this is done on the header, you can now add one or more tables that you would like to export or import data into. Once you have selected the tables, and let's say table 23 also. Okay. Once you selected the tables that you need, you can also select the number of fields or the fields that you want from this table to be exported or later imported into Business Central or Dynamics NAV. So here you will see fields in tables. So I can, by default, all the fields will be selected. The first thing you'll do is you'll clear included, which will remove all the fields other than the primary key fields. And then you can choose fields that you need. Oh, sorry, this is include field and this is validate field. During import, it validates or calls the validate trigger of that field during the import process. So
there's also another option, so which is the related tables, which is rather practical. Say that you want to import customers, you need the posting groups, like the VAT and everything. It could be created automatically with the configuration package.
Yes.
The related table.
Yeah, the related tables. And once you are done here, I guess there is nothing much on this window other than selecting fields and that you need. And as Sam said about the related tables that are here. Then you can close this. You can repeat the same exercise on your other table if you have multiple of them. You can clear include and let's say just the name and name too. Okay. Once you have done that, there is also a possibility that you can, while exporting data, you can filter out data that based on a field. So you can come here and you can also apply a filter on a table. So you can say that I only need customers who are not blocked, let's say. Okay, blocked. So I can say that the blocked is false. Oh, sorry. Blocked is blank, which is customer, right? In the same way, you can apply filters if you want. And then if you move toward right, you will see the number of fields which are available in the table, the number of fields that you have selected based on that matrix, and then how many records are there in these tables based on the filter that you have applied. There are 5 records in this table and 5 in this. Once you are done with this, you can always export it to Excel. And it's based on how many tables you have selected. So if you want all the tables at the same go, you can select both of them and then do an export to Excel. Once you do that, it'll download an Excel file on your local PC, and you will see the fields that you have selected on different tables. If you have to load new, you can clear these up and add new, or if you have to update them. So let's say, let me update these vendors. And I'm updating the name 2 into them, all of them. Don't touch on row number 1 and 2. They are kind of read by the configuration package. So don't touch these rows where it talks about the configuration package name, the table name, and the table number. Same here. There is no name to on customer, and I might have selected more field, but I forgot to include, I guess. So you can update those, and I can also add a new record, but I don't have all the necessary fields which are needed, and I don't think I have manual numbers enabled. So let's save this. Once this is saved and I've updated these name tools, you can come back here, and from here I can import back from the Excel that I have. So I can also drag it from there like I'm doing right now and place it here, or you can choose. Oh, okay. So as soon as it reads it, this window may be different in the older versions of nav, but once you are on Business Central, you'll see a window like this. Just to confirm the import preview, it shows you this, and you can click on import. Now the data is available in the package, but it is not yet applied to the database. So if you see right now in the number of package records, you'll see that the data is available, but this is not yet updated into your actual table. To update this, you can again select these 2 tables, and there should be an option somewhere to apply data. So once you apply this data, click continue. It applies that data. It says 2 tables are processed, 7 records has been modified, and you click OK. Now you can go back to your tables and see the data that has been updated. The only thing that you need to remember is you cannot work with system tables using rapid start. So you can't do export of companies, or you can't do export of users, permissions. These are system tables that you cannot change. Otherwise, it'll allow you to do majority of changes in the system as the data update. You cannot do ledger entries, as obvious as it is. If you see now, the name too for these customers have been updated, and same for the vendors would have been updated. Anyone saying something?
Saurabh, can you try to add some interface tables like email outbox or something?
I doubt, but let's give it a try. Okay, configuration package. Which one, Vijay, you said?
Email outbox.
Email outbox. Let's see. No, that seems a restricted table. Yeah, this seems restricted. And is there a way that I can see filters here? If yes, then we will know what's happening. So it's trying to do all objects with captions, but then there are filter of a specific range. Let's copy this. Okay, if I can, let me try to put it in Notepad. And here is the filter. It says on the object ID, there is a filter till 19999, 2004, and 2005, and table view filters. Can I do this? Which is this table? Let's try this. ID filter on this. This is permission set. So you can actually do permission set now. But what is the email outbox table number is?
Something around 8,000, I think.
Then in that case, that should be in the list. But let's see. Filter box. Am I typing it wrong? Email.
Just try with email.
Email outbox. Okay, this is 4 times 8. Okay, so let's give it a try. It does add it. So what it will export? That'll be interesting to see. Let's see what the fields are. The field are ID, message ID, account ID, connector, security ID, and message. Okay, let's keep it as it is. There is no. Is there a data? No. So let's add a email just to make sure that. I don't have an email set up. That's weird. I don't remember the password, but that's okay. Let me do my Gmail. So for multi-factor authentication, you can do a app password if required. It's required, not if. mpp.com. I don't know the password, but let me do it. Just need a fake account to be set up. Finish. Okay. Okay, and let me send a test email so that it goes into my outbox. And Vijay, did you try extending that enum?
No, I haven't tried that.
Okay. It should not go. Why it's taking so much time? Okay. Mhm. Let me refresh this. But what you will get out of this, as in you will not get the email message exactly, because I guess that gets stored somewhere else. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but this one seems possible that you can export it out based on whatever the fields which are there. They will be able to be exported. But okay, while this is happening, and we'll come back to this. Let me go back to the other question. I'll come back to this. There was a question around.
This is 18.3.
Yes, this is 18.3.
Maybe it's allowed in 18.3, but because I tried in 18.1 or 2, it was not allowing to add these tables in configuration package.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Now if I go to, there is a message. So now if I go to configuration package, select my test, there is this table and there should be one record in the database. Yes. And let me try to do an Excel, export to Excel. Yes. It's out, and this data came out from this, which is the GUID for message, the GUID for account that used for send email, user, is there a task attached to it, date queued, and send from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I haven't tried it on 18.2, but 18.3 does allow this. I just checked it.
Yeah, that's fine. But 18.2, it was not allowing to add. I've tried that. That's why I.
Okay, so yeah, there was a question around from somebody on LinkedIn this time around the upgrade toolkit for BC customers upgrade, and I had some follow-up question with that person right now, but this is another common question that I keep on receiving about the upgrade path for Business Center, and I just wanted to draw a rough path, assuming that if your customer is using an ISV, they also follow the Microsoft path, and Microsoft has very clear paths to move to Business Central from any version. And I'm not going super back into nav, but it starts, let's say, from 2009. So if your customer is using either 2009 or SP1 or R2, then they can directly upgrade from there to nav 2015. Microsoft have a step which can take data from 2009 versions to nav 2015. If your customer is using nav 2013 or 2013 R2, then they can directly upgrade to 2018. There's a direct path from 2013 to and 2013 R2 to nav 2018. If your customer is on 2015 or 2016 or 2017 or 2018, all these versions have a direct path for Business Central 14. So if your customer is on 2009, they'll have to hop in twice. If they're on 2013, they'll have to hop in, as in this will be one upgrade, but as for you as their partners, it'll be two-step upgrade till Business Central 14. And from 2015, 2018, 16 or 17, it'll be one upgrade to Business Central 14. And this all is available from Microsoft. These are not custom paths. Microsoft, way back in NAV versions, at least on 2015, there was a Microsoft article which details all these steps. And till 2009, they were part of the DVD. There's a Word document that comes up which talks to you about how to execute these steps. Once you reach to BC14, that's the last version of NAV, as NAV being C child. And then there is this version which was supporting CL and AL both. At this point, you can now go to Business Central 15, 16, 17, or 18. I should have actually crossed off BC15 because this is no longer supported. BC15 is out of support. So if you don't know it, anytime now a new version comes up, the old version goes away. So now when BC19 will be released, BC16 will no longer be supported. So from BC14, you can jump to any of these versions. At the same time, you can also jump to BC SAS. So from BC14, the best practice that I have seen all these years by doing all these upgrades is to convert all your custom code to events and move your data from CAL to AL here in BC14, because then the journey becomes super simple going forward. And then Microsoft have upgrade path for all the versions from 14 as of now. How long they will publish it, I don't know. But as of today, you can upgrade in one step from 14 to 15, 16, 17, or 18. And at the same time, from these versions, you can still replicate to SAS. If your customer directly want to go to SAS, then they have a slight detour all available also, which is from 14 directly to SAS. So this is Microsoft part of doing the data upgrade from 2009 till BC SAS, if you have to do it. The people where people get confused is at this point what they should do. There are both the ways available from Microsoft, which are written here on this upgrade guideline. So if you are upgrading, and let's pick the latest one, 2021 release wave 1, which is BC18, and this is not for India at this point. Microsoft is working on it. Once you come to this and click on application and data, Microsoft gives you both the options from a version 14 unmodified CAL. That means you don't have any customs in CAL. All your customs in BC14 are in AL. Even all your data around table extensions and new tables is also in AL. So if you are at this stage where your BC14 base Microsoft code is not touched and there are no CL objects, new objects in the database, then this is the path, which is super simple. Install, upgrade, prepare version, convert your database to BC18, set some properties, import license, publish Microsoft extensions, restart, synchronize, and all these things, which are pretty straightforward. And this is the way I would recommend. So I know everybody will have customizations when they come from older versions, but at this point, once you bring them to BC14, try to write your script so that you can move your data from 14 base CAL to an extension that you have built. If you want to try Microsoft route, which is super complex, I have tested this, then you go to this route, which is from version 14 customize CAL. This is a little bit complex. Just this graph will make it complex for you. But there are multiple empty extensions that you'll have to create. And then you have to, if you see this, there is a huge process to upgrade your data, but it's also possible. If somebody is curious how it is done, go ahead and try this step. This is available from Microsoft. Move code to customs, create table extension, create your first version, second version. Then there is a JSON file that you create, which is this app rules file. So there is a way. You don't have to be creative in BC14 if you don't want to. And you can follow this big process to upgrade from a customized CAL to a base BC18 environment on-premise. So all this is defined, written here. This all works. I have tested all this on a Cronus database with some customs done. The only thing that I'll recommend anybody who is doing past BC14 is once you come to this page, make sure to check this, which is called as upgrade compatibility metrics.
Hold on, sir. I think you can paste the link, the previous link to the.
Sure,
on the
I'll do that. Yeah.
because I'm lazy to write to look for it myself.
Okay. So make sure to visit this link all the time when you're going forward past BC14, because this becomes super important and you might get some error which you will not find solutions if you don't follow this matrix. Now the matrix is super simple. It seems a little bit complex, but it's super simple. If you are on BC14 CU0, that means when you are upgrading your customer, you bring them to CU0 of Business Central 14. Then you can upgrade them to 15.0, 16.0, 17 or 18.0 or higher, or higher. So let's take, just to make it clear, if you are on 14.26, which is cumulative update 25 for Business Central 14, or let's say this is none, because this is no longer supported. So let's pick this one. If you are on 14.23, which is cumulative update 22 of Business Central 14, then the minimum version of 15, 16, and 17 and 18 that you can go is these, which means from 14.23, and this is, I'm talking about objects, not the platform. If the merge that you did in Business Central 14 during upgrading your customer, you did on 14.23, then you cannot use 15.16 or 16.11 or 17.5. They need to be at least on these versions. Is that clear? That's the minimum of it. So based on which version of 14 you are in, the upgrade code that is now part of the base Microsoft app, base app of Business Central 15, 16, 17, and 18 is written in a way that if you break this matrix, it'll give you errors, weird errors. So once you come to 14, the best approach is if you can go to Business Central 14 CU0. That's the best approach, because then you can go to any versions of 16, 17, and 18. But for some reason, if you have to choose Business Central 14.15, which is cumulative update 14, then on the target side, you cannot have 16.3. It should be 16.4 or later. So keep an eye on this while you're doing your upgrades. Otherwise, your process will surely fail. And Sam, you needed this, so let me put this in chat. The other thing that you need to notice where people are getting a little bit confused is these two
Well, not just the matrix, previous.
The compatibility one.
Yeah, the no, that's the one. That's the one here.
Okay. If you are upgrading, and I don't know that you will have to do any other upgrades, but this is under application and data, where you find how to upgrade your data from 14 to higher. I don't know the reason, but if you have to do a technical upgrade, now understand what the technical upgrade is. Technical upgrade means you are only changing the platform, you're not changing the code. And I don't know why you will have to do it, but maybe there is a reason, and that's why there is an article. So if you have to do this, then and only then come into this technical upgrade section, because it will not upgrade your code. If you see here, your custom base app CAL 14 will remain as it is as custom base app of your PC 18. You'll just be using the platform of 18. I don't know the reason why you will do that. As in, I don't think that there is any logical thing to by going that route. As in, it's super complex to manage cumulative updates in this model for sure. But if you have to do it, then and only then do a technical upgrade. Otherwise, there is no other reasoning of doing a technical upgrade.
See, sort of sometimes what happens, I recently have done a platform upgrade only, and which is even Microsoft have suggested, because The customer was using 16 point of some CU. In that CU 16.5, there was some issue. Whenever you open a card page, it went again back to the list page and then open the card page. So that issue was related to platform upgrade. So then I did platform upgrade to 16.12 or 13.
But that was from 15, you said, right?
Yeah, 16.5 have that issue. Then I did platform upgrade to 16.12.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense because this one is talking about CAL code, BC14, which is no reasoning of taking your bad code of CAL to an 18 platform. As in, the issue that you're saying makes complete sense. But even then, and this is another challenge that we are trying also to sort out within our team, is cumulative updates, which we now call as minor updates, are not that hard that they were in CAL world. So the situation that Vijay just told, on a situation like that, I'll actually do a minor update. And this is the process if you have to apply a cumulative update. Okay, which is not that complex. I ran it last night because one of my colleagues was stuck and it hardly took us 25 minutes to do a cumulative update on a customer environment. And they were using LS retail, which is one of the most complex extension because LS had a dependency on 18.2 or something, and our customer was using 18.0. So we had to upgrade them to 18.2 so that the customer can install LS Central Lab, whatever those are. So for those kind of situations, to install a cumulative update, there is a process defined which walks you through about getting the new apps for Microsoft base, system, application, and if you are using other Microsoft extensions. And this is that process that is defined how you do that. And all these options are available for all the available versions. Spring 2019 was your BC14. 2019 release wave 2 is BC15, BC16, BC17, and BC18. So once you are in the BC era, then these articles which I just showed you are applicable, as in for this domain. Prior to this, you will again find Microsoft articles about it. I'm pretty optimistic that there will be some articles for the legacy versions. So like if you are on 14, I'm pretty sure for 14 there is an application and data upgrade. This is just the application, and this is single tenant mode. This is the data. So it walks you through that how you do it from 15, 16, 17, and 18, and also BC13, which I forgot in my diagram because very few customers are on Business Central 13. So you can actually upgrade to Business Central 14 from all these versions, and this is all these steps which are written there very clearly. So this is covered in that article. This is also available in the same page. Only about this part, you will get it in for 2015. There is a separate documentation. I'll have to find it, but there was a PDF released from Microsoft how you do from 2009 to 15, and this article will still be available in MSDN if you search for it. If somebody want me to go back from 2009, because I understand that there are still customers in legacy version, let me know either on chat or email and we can talk about it next week. That's not a problem. Any questions before we call for the day?
Yes or no, I have.
Go ahead.
One of our customer using a portal site that is getting a data from web service through the nav, and we developed the portal So the issue is it is working in a web browser, and if they are using a Wi-Fi and in mobile and tablet it is working when it is using a Wi-Fi, but if they are using a mobile data, then they cannot access the portal site. It is giving an error. An error has occurred. Please try again later. Is there any something, I don't know, like it is a code issue, but is there any way we can figure out?
Do check in the event log of the service tier. There will surely be an irrelevant, there will be a relevant error message regarding what is missing. Is it the certificate that it is looking for? Is it the validation that is not happening? Because this can be around a SSL certificate or other things, right? So go into the service tier and then check the event log of that service tier.
Yeah, and it is a weird thing is when they are accessing through the Wi-Fi, the same thing they are trying to access, it is working. But
Because
if they are using a,
Wi-Fi is in a domain, right? Wi-Fi
okay,
is in a domain, and
okay,
that domain is the same domain I'm expecting where the website is hosted,
okay.
where your web portal is hosted.
Mhm.
So do check that, as in the service tier logs will tell you why it is not able to connect to that.
Okay, let me check it. And
Okay.
thanks.
Anybody else have any other questions? Okay. Thank you all. Enjoy your Sunday, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Saurav. It was great as
Thank
usual.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.
Right, people, have
Thanks,
fun.
Saurabh.
Thanks a lot, sir.
Bye.
Hello, Saurav, are you still there?
Yeah, tell me. Just give me a
Yeah.
minute.